We don't have one of our hands. You see Samoa?
You want some more?
Yeah, we know him.
Now can I have your attention? Ma'am? Madam? Thank you.
Okay, now. So just speak to this.
Good morning, distinguished delegates. I trust you've all had a restful evening yesterday and ready for another day of plenary. The conference is called to order. We shall now take up agenda item 3, priority issues pertaining to the advancement of gender equality and the empowerment of women in Asia and the Pacific. Under this agenda item, the conference will review emerging areas and priority areas for action to provide recommendations for the acceleration of the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in the context of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through a moderated panel discussion, followed by an open discussion with participants under the following thematic areas. Our first panel discussion today is entitled Realizing Gender Equality for Women and Girls in the thematic area of inclusive development, shared prosperity, and decent work. We will review key issues regarding women's economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, poverty reduction, as well as the issues of social protection, access to universal health care, and public services. Our second panel discussion this morning is entitled Realizing Gender Equality for Women and Girls in the thematic area of freedom from violence, stigma, and stereotypes. We will review key issues regarding the advancement of gender equality and the empowerment of women in the area of freedom from violence, stigma, and stereotypes. Our third panel discussion, which will take place immediately after the lunch break, is entitled Realizing Gender Equality for Women and Girls in the thematic area of accountability, participation, and gender-responsive institutions. We will review key issues regarding gender-responsive budgeting, planning, and institutions, as well as strategies to promote women's participation in decision-making and women's leadership across all sectors and at all levels of society, including in the context of peaceful and inclusive societies. Our fourth and final panel discussion today is entitled Realizing Gender Equality for Women and Girls in the thematic area of environmental conservation, climate action, and resilience building. We will review key issues, strategies, and good practices to integrate gender perspectives in policies and programs related to environmental conservation, climate action, climate resilience, and disaster risk reduction, as well as women's participation in these areas. Delegations wishing to contribute to the interactive discussions on agenda item 3 are invited to do so after each of the 4 panel discussions. Kindly note that while the floor will be open to the plenary during the panel discussion for questions and answers, all interventions during the Q&A should be in response to the panel discussions only. Distinguished delegates, we will now proceed with a panel discussion on realizing gender equality for women and girls in the thematic area of inclusive development, shared prosperity, and decent work. The discussion will be moderated by Dr. Srinivas Tata, Director, Social Development Division of ESCAP. I now invite Dr. Tata and the panelists to take their seats and for the moderator to introduce the distinguished panelists and initiate the panel discussion. Dr. Tata, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And it's my honor to moderate this opening panel discussion. And may I invite the panelists to please take their seats on the podium, please. Doreen in the middle. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, distinguished delegates, this is indeed a unique opportunity to explore an area of very deep importance, not only for the Beijing+25 review, the Beijing Platform for Action, but also for all SDGs. We believe that the economic empowerment of women is critical, not only for achieving all the goals, all the SDG goals, but also for achievement of the objectives of the Beijing Platform for Action. In our region, we all know about the challenges. Our region has perhaps one of the lower female labor force participation, and in some sub-regions it's actually taking a slight dip. It's about 50%. That means only 1 out of 2 women is actually participating in the labor market. And of the people, of the women who are employed and who are working, a very large number are in vulnerable employment, not getting access to social protection, and are not within the formal sector. And they are often deprived of the benefits that people in the formal sector would get. And third, last but not least, it's estimated that the value of bringing women into the labor market, apart from being an objective just on its own, would add, just if you had a 25% increase in labor force participation, it would add more than 3 trillion to this region's GDP. It makes economic sense, but that's not the only thing. It makes sense on its own. It's the right of all women. So to explore this, we have a very, very distinguished panel here. And I think it's a panel that really is cross-cutting and reflects the very cross-cutting nature of the issue. On my left is His Excellency Dr. Tuetama Leo Talelele, who is the Minister of Women, Community and Social Development of Samoa, who will bring us the Pacific perspective and also how they have addressed social and cultural norms in their efforts to provide economic empowerment to women. The next panelist on his left is Ms. Doreen Chenaz. Many of you might know a lot about her. She is the founder of one of the first social stock exchanges in our region. She's also the founder of the IIX Foundation, which supports businesses and provides development solutions to the most marginalized people. And I think it's a very unique concept that she's going to introduce us to. Next to her is Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, who is the Principal Secretary, Industries and IT in one of the states of India, which is Telangana. And he will give us an insight into how innovation and IT, from a government perspective, has really promoted economic empowerment of women. We sometimes associate innovation only with private sector, but he'll tell us how the government has done it. Ms. Nadira Yusuf is going to bring us the entrepreneur's perspective. She is a woman entrepreneur herself, and she also is going to reflect on how unpaid care of women needs to be taken into account and what steps could be taken in order to ensure that this unpaid work of women is recognized and how this can really be converted and addressed in order to promote the economic empowerment. Last but not least, Estrella Penunia, Secretary General of the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Development. She will bring us the perspective of rural women and the unique challenges that they face. And I think the range that is covered here are very much issues that are under discussion in the other room in CR4 where the outcome document is being discussed. So they would benefit very much from our discussions over here. So Dr. Tuatama, I have a couple of questions to start off with you. I mean, what are some of the recent interventions that Samoa has introduced in order to promote economic empowerment of women? And I understand that you have faced some challenges also in addressing social and cultural barriers in this regard. So if you have, if in about intervention of about 7 or 8 minutes, if you could tell us how you've done this.
Thank you, moderator. Samoa has made significant progress towards advancing women's economic empowerment since ratifying the Human Rights Conventions and adoptions of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And given the focus of this panel discussion is on women economic empowerment, I would therefore like to share Samoa's development in this particular area. So what are some of the recent interventions that has resulted in the increased economic empowerment of women in Samoa? The Ministry of Women, Community and Social Development secured funding support through the Samoa Women Shaping Development Program, Samoa Disability Project, and Youth Employment Program to promote entrepreneurship and job creation trainings and opportunities for women, young people, and persons with disabilities. Trainings have provided unemployed women with the basic business management skills, financial literacy skills, and knowledge and access to start-up grants to establish micro-businesses for the youth of selected communities where 73% of trainees are now employed. Through these funding mechanisms, the Ministry of Women, Community and Social Development managed to support the small grant scheme programs where individual women and youths from all over the country were encouraged to start small businesses activities, not only to generate revenues, but to also provide for subsistence living. The Ministry of Women, Community and Social Development District Development Planning Program, initiated 2 years ago, continues to open up opportunities for increased women contribution to village and district level governance planning processes. The women leadership in Samoa, in partnership with the UNDP and UN Women, is providing training opportunities for women's participation in leadership pathways and promoting political inclusivity with legal training support for women parliamentarians. The Ministry of Women, Community and Social Development has developed the National Community Economic Development Policy and Strategy 2018, Tua Ilevao Ola Strategy, which focuses on assisting the most vulnerable families through the Small Business Incubator and the Supporting People into Jobs program. Further, the Ministry of Women, Community and Social Development, together with the Samoa Chamber of Commerce and the private sector business community, have been running the internship program where employment employment opportunities were offered for young women and men, and about 85% of the interns managed to secure permanent jobs with the various private companies. The ministry, through the support of its development partners, supported the scholarship program for young boys and girls who have dropped out of secondary schools to attend technical and vocational education and training as another avenue to provide opportunities of employment and for business development. The government led program for the revival of the ESCAP, that is a fine mat, provides opportunities for women to generate income given the cultural value of the item, and also indirectly addressing social-related issues within families. The government of China also delivered training for women on sewing skills as part of the Small Business Without Walls incubator program. This sewing training, conducted by the Chinese experts, involved about 100 women from different villages in the country, and has revealed that most of the participants have been able to use their skills they had gained to earn money from sewing products for customers. Rural-based businesses have been supported in 2018 by the launch of a new platform called Moa App by a local business-owned company called the Sky Eye, in partnership with one of the Samoa's telecommunication companies, Digicel. The MOA application will be used to enable rural businesses and communities to participate in a national marketplace. The Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Labor delivers programs that advance the unemployed into employment through the apprenticeship training scheme and the Jobs Seekers program. The seasonal employment program with the government of New Zealand and Australia offers employment opportunities for unemployed young men and women to work in New Zealand and Australia. The Samoa Victim Support Group launched their Nofotane program, which aims to improve economic empowerment of women married into the community and encourage their participation in domestic and community matters in order to raise their standing and acknowledge their contribution to the village community. The program has reportedly trained 5,000 women through 237 villages in 500 new small businesses being established. So how are we addressing the social and cultural barriers?
Can we address that in the second round? Okay. I think we'll go around the second round, if that's because that will then complete the round. Okay. Doreen, my next question is for you. Now, can you tell us about some of the innovative financial instruments that have been created in this region and otherwise for economic empowerment of women? And maybe then you can talk about your own experience, but in terms of IIX, but tell us about the broad picture that's out there.
Sure. Thank you very much, and thank you, Madam Chair, for opening the session, and thank you for all of you for being a part of this very, very important discussion. Before I jump into the whole innovative finance and what that means, because it may be something new for all of you, what I want you to pause and think about is one word, and that is courage. We need to have courage to actually challenge the status quo. We need to have the courage to innovate, and we need to have the courage to actually bring everyone into the equation where they're valuing women as a key component of the financial markets. Now, why financial markets? Because the reality is, all of you in this audience, you're from various gender departments. For you to do any work, let's face it, you need money. Yes. And you, all of you, are going to go back to your governments with wonderful ideas, and you say, okay, we should be doing X, we should be doing Y, but can you give us the money? The reality is, how can we have the courage to actually change that equation so that you can go back and say, I actually don't need the money. You need the money as the government, because you need to think differently on how you're going to grow the economy and how you're going to meet the SDG goals, which is now at a deficit of $7 trillion. We cannot do that by just shifting money from one pocket to the other. We need to do that by standing up to the global financial market and make us a part of it. The global financial market currently, say it's about $80 to $100 trillion. Doing good, philanthropy, that's only 300 billion. It's a drop in the bucket. We need trillions of dollars to come in if we are going to actually create any kind of gender equality or gender empowerment. So with that in mind, 10 years ago, I started IIX, Impact Investment Exchange. I'm a social entrepreneur. And I took on the audacious task of actually challenging the financial market, but in their own way. So what have we done? We have created the world's first equity crowdfunding platform. It's the largest focused on creating social and environmental good. We have unlocked over $130 million. Then I said, this is not enough. We actually need to go further in the journey, because it's not about just giving money to a woman to buy a cow. It's about making sure that women actually can change that into a dairy farm and then actually go and have an IPO in the market, where investors are valuing her for the economic contribution that she has made. So that was the beginning of the Women's Livelihood Bond, which I am proud and very, very honored and privileged to say ESCAP is a partner in our Women's Livelihood Bond. It was the first time ever in the 800 years of capital markets that a bond was listed with women as the center focus. A bond that was listed on celebrating creating livelihood for women. The way we did it was actually using the tools of financial market. We created an extremely innovative financial product, and the result of that was, for the first time, the investors actually looked at something and saying, wow, it actually makes sense. We are actually getting the return we want, and it is actually creating the social good, which frankly is also de-risking the investment. So it was an incredible, incredible moment of bringing the entire ecosystem together, where you had bankers, lawyers, investors, enterprises, and women working together and making innovative finance and a solution for gender equality. So the success with Women's Livelihood Bond 3 years ago, now we actually have the other bond in the market. So again, with all of you in the audience, so for you to know, it is actually live. You can have your governments even look into buying it. We have enterprises from India, from Cambodia, from Indonesia, and from Sri Lanka as a part of this bond, which is out in the market now. We need innovative finance if we're going to actually address all the problems which are out there, and we need to have courage for that. And the numbers speak for themselves. 4 years ago, only $100 million went into innovative finance. Now it's over $4 billion. The market is ready. The onus is on us to go out there and capture the market and have the courage to actually value women and put them front and center of financial markets.
Thank you, Doreen. I'll come back to you on the scalability and how this can be. Jayesh, very simply, in your experience in Telangana, it's one of the more, it also houses one of the IT capitals of India. And you're someone who works in industries and IT, not directly, but then you do a lot of work to promote women's entrepreneurship. Tell me how you've used technology and innovation to really promote this. Give some examples.
Sure.
And then maybe we can go into...
Sure, thank you. So when the moderator mentioned that there are certain countries in the region where there is a dip in women participation in the labor force, India is one such country. In fact, Deloitte has done a detailed study, and they have shown that over a decade, the ratio has fallen down by almost 10 percentage point. And obviously, this is a matter of concern. So as most of you would be aware, India is a federal country. There is a national government, and then there are 28 provinces. So I represent the southern province of Telangana. Our capital city is Hyderabad. And as a government, we are very conscious of our responsibility to promote women entrepreneurship, women empowerment. So, Mr. Srinivas, if you permit, I'll give 4 initiatives, examples of 4 initiatives, and these follow a life cycle approach. So we start when girls are in schools, in colleges, and then support them through their entrepreneurial journey over a period of time. So 4 specific examples on how do we work on promoting greater women participation in workforce. So one good thing about India and all the Indian states is that the enrollment of girls in schools is now very high. It is as good as boys. We have been able to contain dropouts also very significantly. So there is a ready-made catchment available of girl children in schools. But obviously, the access to quality education and the proper mentoring and guidance about opportunities in future is something which is very important, very critical. So as a government, we work on rolling out a very comprehensive STEM education program. Typically when girls are in their grades 8th, 9th, 10th. 10th is a very critical period when girls and obviously their parents have to make a choice on how would they continue their education, including a decision of not continuing their education any further. So it is at that stage, in partnership with lots of private companies, technology companies. So as the moderator mentioned, Hyderabad is the home to some of the who's who of the IT companies of the world, and we partner with many of them to run STEM programs so that girls understand. Typically, it is a matter of a mindset or mental block that studying STEM subjects is not for girls. There is some complexity involved, or there are some additional challenges involved which only boys can cope up. So demystifying some of these wrong notions is a very important of that STEM education program. Now, the second thing is that when we identify a large number of girls who are now able to actually join STEM courses, we work on something very innovative. Typically in India, when you are doing a professional STEM course, you are also supposed to do a college project. Typically when you are in the 3rd year of your college or the final year of your college. So we have introduced a program which is called a Technology Entrepreneurship Program. And typically these programs are offered to colleges and to girls who are in rural cities and rural locations. The idea is that you convert this college project not just into an engineering project or a STEM project, but convert it into a full-fledged business plan. And we take assistance from some of the best business schools that are located in Hyderabad. Some of you may know that one of the best business schools in the country, which is called the Indian School of Business or ISB, is located in Hyderabad. So the faculty from ISB, other business schools from the city, actually go to the rural areas and try to mentor the girl students who are doing a STEM project to convert it into a full-fledged business plan. And this is an opportune moment to sow seeds of entrepreneurship into them. The next initiative is that a large number of girls who then start understanding and valuing entrepreneurship as a prospective career are supported in an incubator which is dedicated for women entrepreneurs, which is located in Hyderabad and which is called V-Hub. In fact, we hosted the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Hyderabad in 2017. And during the valedictory session of that GES, we made this commitment that to build on the momentum, the theme of Global Entrepreneurship Summit 2017 was Women First, Prosperity for All. And we decided that if this momentum has to be kept going, something special needs to be done for women. And thereafter, we have created this dedicated incubator, the first of its kind in the country, which is called V-Hub. And lots of women who have ideas for entrepreneurship are encouraged to become a part of that incubation process. Lots of hand-holding, curating, developing refinements in their business plan, developing go-to-market strategies, etc. are worked out. Typically, if you go to any other incubator, the normal concept is that you walk inside the incubator with an idea and you go out with a product. In V-Hub, the motto is a bit different. We commit to the women that even if you don't have an idea, you can walk in and we will help you generate that idea, and obviously we will help you with all the subsequent processes. And the final example is that of the women entrepreneurs or the prospective entrepreneurs who go through this incubation process, those of them who choose to establish their business, we have created dedicated industrial parks for them. So my province of Telangana is the first one in the country which has 4 dedicated industrial parks only for women entrepreneurs, where we provide them subsidized land, subsidized plots, and a range of financial incentives, including tax breaks, including discounted power tariff, and so on and so forth, apart from lots of common services, marketing assistance, etc. So in a secure environment, they are able to take up their SMEs and their manufacturing and service activities. Now, many of people, when we explain this range of initiatives to them, have a thought or have a question on why do you focus exclusively on women? There is a counter question that unless you mainstream them along with men, perhaps giving them too much of a separate identity and managing their activities in a different track will not be productive. But our counter argument is that since the base is so low, since the ratios of women participation in workforce is so low, unless we are able to generate that critical mass and bring that attention on their issues and concerns and challenges, we need to do these in the beginning, and thereafter only we'll have to look at opportunities to mainstream them.
Thank you, Jayesh. I think you've covered both parts of the question very well. Nadira, my question to you is, as an entrepreneur, you've focused also a lot on unpaid care and converting that into and addressing that in terms of then helping women enter employment and go into entrepreneurship. So can you give us some examples of how you've gone about that, and maybe go into a practical example of how you do it?
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very, very blessed to be here this morning. I guess I should be sharing a little bit on, how we actually started. So I run an organization called Kiddo Care, and Kiddo Care is actually a platform. We use technology to solve inadequacies of childcare, and of course by making childcare right? And why we do this, because I am very involved with women's organization as well. And a lot of times we see, women saying, citing childcare or even care work as the major barrier to participating in economic activities. And 30% of Malaysian women, drop out of their workforce simply to take care of their children or to take care of their elderly. So this breaks our hearts, right? We know the capabilities of women. We understand that, even in Malaysia, there is a higher percentage of women in higher learning institutions, right? And these are a major group of potential. They are potential consumers, they are potential leaders, but we're losing them, right? And because of this, we thought, hey, we've got to come in and look at this in a different way. I know we have a representative from the Malaysian Ministry of Women, but these are some facts that took us aback, right? As a consumer, as a women entrepreneur. So in Malaysia alone, we've got a population of 5 million children below the age of 9, right? And over and beyond that, we require about 38,000 childcare centers. We only have 4,000, about that, right? So where will these children go, right? And these are at the early stage of their lives. They not only require care, but they require the right kind of educational and values, right? And we have women dropping out of the workforce to take care of their own children, and that contributes to unpaid care, right? Now, how do we solve this, right? How do we solve this more innovatively? Yes, there is a whole lot of call to set up childcare centers. Now, that's good, but it also requires a whole lot of investment, infrastructurally, right? So if we're going to go ahead and say, hey, come, let's build more childcare centers, get the corporates to build in more childcare centers, corporates come back to us and say, hey, but this is not my business, right? And I'm not here to take risk, right? So how do we look at this and change this and still provide something that is safe and reliable? And that's when we look at women who are there, right, and can participate as key contributors towards the development of children in the early stage. So that's when we came out with Kiddo Care. So basically it gives access to women to come in and participate as a childcare entrepreneur at different stages of their business, right? So Kiddo Care provides a platform for women to come in, be trained, be certified, get the right kind of skill and qualification to then offer their services as individual service providers. Now, how do we do this? Gig economy is something that we foresee as one of the core areas to pursue jobs in the future. Now, if we were going to pursue this, with the whole call for flexible working and getting women to be involved in work and have a balanced life, now we've got to make gig economy work the right way, right? If we keep talking gig economy as gig economy workers, then I think we're going to go back to the same kind of talk. We're going to be talking about, what's the safety net, what kind of protection can we give them, because you're looking from a worker's point of view. So when we came in and did this, we said, no, we're going to change the narrative. We're not going to call them gig economy workers. We're going to call them gig entrepreneurs. You come in with a total different mindset. You're building this as your own service without having to put a lot of investment initially, but you have the potential to grow. So we're growing women entrepreneurs as solo, individual childcare entrepreneurs first. They come in and become service providers to other women who needs this kind of support and grow themselves as they go along. So they come in as professional nannies, but we call them nanny entrepreneurs, right? And then they could take courses as and when they have more experience, they've gained more income, take additional courses and become host homes owners. Now, host home is another example of how we're introducing in-house preschool and in-house childcare that will allow standardization of quality access and education to other areas. Now, with that, with more income, with more experience and interest, they could then go on to developing their own childcare centers and other type of interventions for children. Now, this platform allows a whole wealth of opportunities under the children economy. And this is where we're actually coming from. Thank you.
I think, Nadira, you've introduced a lot of concepts, the potential of the care economy and the growing gig economy. And as countries age, and I think a lot of delegates here might pick up on that. Estrella, you are going to bring in the perspective of rural women and the challenges, especially, in many parts of our region, the face of poverty is the poor rural farmer, often with the men having migrated. The subsistence farmer is that of an aging woman. So I just wanted you to highlight what are the key challenges that they face and what can be done in order to promote their economic empowerment of rural women.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good morning to everyone, and I thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to be with you today. The Asian Farmers Association is a membership-based organization of national farmers associations, unions, and cooperatives. We also manage several regional projects, and this brings us to work and partner with 89 national farmers organizations with around 14 million members in 25 countries in Asia and the Pacific. So I would like to share with you 3 things based on our encounters with our members. First, what is our understanding and perspective? We know that agriculture is still contributes a big part of the GDP, and we know that the women farmers are the backbone of the rural economy. Because, and we can see that if you want to find the nexus between food, agriculture, health, sanitation, water, and energy, you will find it in the many work that the women farmers do at their homes and in their communities and societies. Second, we know that in terms of economic empowerment, while we, for example, produce also food, we know that to be empowered, that means to be able to also have a say in our prices, have a say in what we produce, and have a significant involvement in the value chain of what we produce. Okay? So with this kind of understanding, what is our narrative now as farmers organizations? We want to change our narrative also. Women farmers are seen as dependent, helpless, victims, yes. But we are not. We are solution providers. And in many of our member organizations, we have these many innovations. In India, for example, our member Self-Employed Women's Association, since 1995 when Beijing platform was adopted, they launched an agriculture campaign, making farming an enterprise, organizing their 2 million members into associations, providing pooling the resources of their members so that they can provide savings and credit, finance resources, training. They have trained thousands of master trainers who provide services to their members in terms of extension services. They have projects on rainfall insurance, on climate insurance, for example. In Bangladesh, we have our member who produces 12 tons of quality seeds for dissemination, rice seeds for dissemination to their members, 10,000 members. In Nepal and in Philippines, we have joint certificates of line titling for both husband and wife. In Laos, in Cambodia, in Vietnam, in Myanmar, in Mongolia, there are women's arms and committees which provide specific services for women in terms also of savings and credit and in terms of value chain addition. Processing, for example, their produce into fruits, juice, wine, chips, and, for example, ointments and herbs, especially for forest-based resources. Okay, in Pacific, we have our partner, PFON, Pacific Farmer Island Network, and they started a floriculture industry in partnership with a company called South Sea Orchids, and they train women farmers and shared planting materials, trained them on business development. Okay. In all these examples, we see that women farmers have held their incomes by themselves, increased their incomes, put food on the table, send their children to school, and provide for some family expenses. And this kind of economic empowerment, they have said, has decreased domestic violence and has increased self-esteem and confidence in themselves. So with these innovations in our members, we see what kind of barriers that they overcome, and then how do we upscale it. So we see that the barriers that they have overcome are barriers in terms of assets to natural resources, their assets to financial resources, and assets to market resources. Plus, they have overcome the problem on how they are unorganized, the problem of being unorganized and being weak. So we take this opportunity in this ministerial conference to say, how can we upscale this? Doreen said that we need money. But where will we put this money? There is money, but where will we put it? We hope that you could invest in the needs, and in the work of the women farmers as they produce, as they aggregate their products, as they process their products, and as they market their products to retailers and consumers in a value chain approach and with women's groups, associations, and cooperatives at the center of it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Estrella. And that's a great first round where you've really provided an introduction to what you've been doing. Coming back to you, Excellency, you listed out so many of the innovative steps that you've taken in Samoa. But just very briefly, before we go out to the audience and cover the other panelists, what are the key social and cultural challenges that you had to overcome? Just very briefly.
I think the common issues anywhere, including the Pacific Islands as well, is financial capacity, which will be enhanced by cultural practices and cultural norms. In the Samoa, the government looks at all levels of the population and tries its best to address this. For example, starting from the elderly, we have recently reviewed the senior citizens pension package by adding, increasing the monthly allowance pension, also free travel on the inter-island ferry, free medical treatment, free medicines for our senior citizens. And then to come down to another level, the working class, we have a accident compensation package, which provides for any injuries that occurs during the work. Also caters also for the damages, for any collateral damages that may result from those injuries, not only to the worker, but also to the family and those affected. And then going down another level, the school level, we have a free grant program ongoing in school, whereby we provide free education for primary as well as secondary school. This is one of another determining factor in the continuity of poverty in the districts, because the lack to educate the younger generations. So our government is providing that for our school population. And then we come down to another sector of determinants, which is illnesses and medical treatments. We provide, the government provide free medical services for all children up to 15 years, all the mothers and pregnant mothers, and also provide overseas treatments for treatments that cannot be conducted in Samoa, but there is good prognosis no matter how serious they are. So we send them to New Zealand or we send them to India, and government provides finance all the treatments as well as travel and accommodation and things. Also provides for checkups after treatments. So these are some of the services that we try to implement in order to lessen the burden of financial incapacity in our population.
So it's a lot of social protection measures that are put in place, both also social assistance and social protection. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Doreen, you have all our member states here. If you had to give a message as to how you think your model could be used in their countries and how this could be upscaled, what would you have to offer?
Thank you for asking that question. My request to all of you would be the fact that we all need to step forward and really think how we can address the social protections, how can we address women empowerment, women equality through the financial markets, and not rely on the multilaterals to tell us how to do so. Because you have the power to do that. You don't need a World Bank or Asian Development Bank. You actually can be part of the Women's Livelihood Bond Series as we're doing it. As a matter of fact, we also, not only with UN ESCAP, we also signed an MOU with UN Women this summer, and we are very excited about the fact that Women's Livelihood Bond will now be part of an umbrella of the orange bonds. What are orange bonds? Orange is the color of SDG 5. So we will take on the financial markets and have bonds which are going to be equivalent of the green bonds. We need to have innovative products in the financial markets which actually addresses women empowerment. We need to have all the work that Esther or Nadira is doing, and we need to make sure that they are done and financed, and the only way you can do it is if you are part of the financial markets and if you're part of that equation. So my big request to all of you is please join us. Please join us in coming in and making sure we can have series of this bond. We have now $150 million series out there. We have 24 million, the first tranche in the market. And my request to all the donor countries, the OECD countries, who play an incredible role, a wonderful role in addressing all these issues of social concern through their financing assistance, my request to you is think of one word, and that is catalyzing. Think if the money that you're putting in if it's catalyzing more money. If you're putting in $1, is that actually bringing in $10? Because the only way you can do that is if you actually use innovative financial instruments. And case in point is the fact that we have the Canadian government with ESCAP, we have DFAT, the Australian government, we have USAID, all of them who have come in and are playing different roles in terms of coming in as a partner in structuring of these bonds or coming in to actually guarantee the bond. We need all of you to come in, to play that catalyzing role, and we need you to be part of the bond. I mean, our next bond, I want it to be we're doing it with the Pacific. We want Samoa to be part of it. We are doing a lot of work in Samoa and Fiji. We need women to be part of the entire value chain of financial markets. So as the journey starts, where Esther starts, where Nadira starts, we need to make sure the women are journeying and ending up at the beacon, the tip, the summit of the financial markets. So that's my big request to you. Thank you.
That's very, very inspiring. So while people are soaking it in, I'm sure we'll have some questions coming up. Jayesh, very simply, you listed a lot of innovative, through the life cycle. Very simply, and a very simple response, or a brief response on what has been the impact of this? And do you think that, is it making an impact? How do you know it's making an impact? And how do you plan to scale it up? Very
Sure.
briefly, please.
So, thank you. See, we have been implementing all these initiatives for the past 4 years or so. And there are two comments to make. One is that unless you follow this sequence, and unless you are comprehensive in your approach, just doing standalone kind of programs perhaps will not be useful. The second important lesson that we have drawn is that these are all very cost-effective interventions and can create precise impact over a very short period in time. So if I look at all the 4 initiatives in a reverse order now, so for instance, the governments across the country do promote industrial development by creating industrial parks, by providing infrastructure. Typically, women entrepreneurs are also encouraged to join, but there is nothing very specifically reserved for them. So if anyone applies, they are encouraged to, they're allotted a plot and so on and so forth. But our experience has shown that if you create an exclusive, dedicated industrial park for women alone, women entrepreneurs alone, that actually stirs up demand. More and more number of women come out and start thinking of actually converting their ideas into a full-blown SME because there is this opportunity. The other initiative of creating an incubator only for women entrepreneurs, prospective entrepreneurs rather, also has the same impact of stirring up demand. Lots of people who otherwise might have missed out on their entrepreneurial journey altogether now feel emboldened that there is an institutional mechanism which supports their ideas. So why not try it out? And we have seen the participation in these kind of initiatives to be very, very high. Similarly, the technology entrepreneurship program where girl students are encouraged to convert their college projects into a full-blown business plan, that also has created good response. In fact, while I mentioned that the overall women participation in labor force is just around a quarter, 26% or so in country. If you look at participation of women in the IT sector, it is much more. It is almost more than 42% actually. So obviously the STEM education programs and the opportunity for women to convert their college projects into much more than a mere project report has led to more number of women getting into the job market, particularly in the IT sector, in the technology sector. So as I said at the beginning, one is that we need to run all these programs together, catching them young when they are in their late schools, colleges, giving them programs, and then offering them a safe environment and a very specific institutional mechanism through which they can run through the entire range of their entrepreneurial journey.
Okay, thank you, Jayesh. I thought it's still too early to put a number. Yes, I understand that. Nadira, where next for Kiddo Care? I mean, I know that it's started, it's really growing, but what's the barrier for the expansion? Or do you see there are no barriers, if you can?
I must say there are a few barriers, right? Number one is to get women or even men to be interested in coming into care work, right? I think globally this has been a big issue, right? Care workers are among the lowest paying workers in the world, right? But think about it. I mean, it's care. It's caring for your children. Early childcare develops a human, right? It is not just about taking care, but instilling the right values, the right kind of education, the right kind of intervention, right? While we talk about, yes, I'm actually a woman in tech, and I feel strongly about educating women and getting them to participate in technology, but let's not forget that we should also start growing quality care workers and providing a good income opportunities for them. Flexible working is the way to go, and flexible quality jobs, right, would increase the income. And I think we can see that from our platform alone. The women who are participating in Kiddo Care has been able to increase their income by 3 to 4 times of their previous income, right? And this is working on a flexible mode. And I would also like to call upon the corporate organizations and even government to adopt care differently, right? Try to change the way we look at caregiving. It does not have to be properly institutionalized, but it has to be professionalized. It has to be done right. Because if we look at current measures and ask current measures to be adopted, then this is where we are because we're looking at current measures, right? We have to stop looking at that and start looking at innovative ways. When we talk about care work, and let's look at the development of a child, say 0 to 9 years old, there's a whole lot of a spectrum of growth and needs. There will be needs for childcare, there will be needs for education, intervention, sports activities. Don't forget that, parents are conveniently giving away tablets and handphones, and even in our own platform, it is alarming to see that 30% of our customers do not know that their children have some kind of learning disabilities, some kind of that. And parents are not able to see that or to identify that. So if we can start building and creating our women and men who can come into the care work and identify, we're not just creating good support for parents, but giving them higher value of work that will increase their pay. And this is the two things that I think would be barriers. Increasing their pay, making sure that they have quality, and looking at policies and regulations that will support different kind of care work.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think recognizing that the care economy is really growing needs to be seen as an industry, seen standardization, quality control, and seen as really adding value. Estrella, if you had one message to give in terms of, I know it's difficult to say one, but the most important message to give to the audience in terms of why do you think, why do all the examples that you have given, what was the common thread that ran through it? What really works? And is there something common, or there are different things that run through? But really, what does really work in really helping rural women, if you had to choose one issue?
Yes, maybe one word will be a partnership. The partnership among, for example, the women farmers themselves.
Yeah.
It's a partnership. It's a cooperation, pulling their resources together, pulling their minds together, making solutions together is one. Partnerships among women farmers and other institutions like government, research institutions, companies. But a partnership that is really partner. Women farmers and their organizations are not seen as just beneficiaries, and therefore the government and the company just give and give, but as partners and when we say partners, they have an equal voice in terms of the decision-making processes that goes in any kind of activity, and a partnership that brings the full potentials of the women farmers as solution providers. Let me, just to plug it, the UN has has established a UN decade on family farming, starting this year until 2028. And there is a global action plan for this. And part of one global action plan pillar is on women. And if you look at the SDGs, much of the SDGs will be taken care of if we put in practice this global action plan. So another word for partnership is basically maybe a partnership of those implementing the UN Decade of Family Farming and the SDGs, where the Family Farming Decade is seen as the accelerator of the SDGs through meaningful partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've heard very comprehensively from all our panelists, and it's time to open the floor for discussion. We have requests from a number of member states to speak on this topic. It would be great if your interventions could be focused on the discussions or the issue at hand, and I'm sure that's what it's going to be. And if you could limit your interventions to about 2 minutes at maximum so that the panelists have time to respond and we can accommodate more discussion. The first speaker on the list who has asked for the floor is the delegation of Japan. Yes, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you for this opportunity to comment. Japan recognizes that great participation by women in every field of endeavor is virtually important if we are to increase the diversity and vitality of our society and enable our economy to sustain strong growth. We also recognize that active participation by women in managerial and senior positions within companies will make a country more competitive. So in line with this recognition, let me talk about the private sector involvement. Japan instituted the Act on the Promotion of Female Participation and Career Advancement in 2015. The Act obligates companies to draw up and disclose action plans on women's empowerment, having understood the situation within their own organizations and analyzed the relevant issues. They are also obliged to disclose information relating to women's participation and advancement in their organizations. This year, the Act was amended to extend the obligation to draw up action plans to more companies and to strengthen the requirements with regards to disclosure of information. Japan is also implementing the initiative in relation to procurement of goods and services by the national government and incorporated administrative agencies. Companies certified complying with the Act on the Promotion of Female Participation and Career Advancement, or with similar certifications, are awarded additional evaluation points during procurement that evaluates factors other than price. In fiscal 2017, such procurement amounted to approximately 1.34 trillion yen in value, approximately 27% of all eligible procurement for the national government and incorporated administrative agencies combined. So as a result of initiatives such as these, the number of women in employment increased for 6 consecutive years by a total of around 2.9 million, even though the working age population as a whole was declining continuously. The percentage of women in employment between the ages of 25 and 44, where many have child care responsibilities, increased from 67.7% in 2012 to 76.5% in 2018, demonstrating steady progress towards eliminating the so-called M-shaped curve issues. So Japan is facing population decline ahead of the Asia-Pacific countries as a result of a falling birth rate combined with a rising ratio of senior citizens. Such falling birth rate and graying of society is expected to take hold among other countries in the region. So Japan is leading the way when it comes to such challenges. So I hope that these initiatives to increase women's participation will serve as a useful reference for every country in the region. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think they're very interesting initiatives and maybe we can reflect on them. The next speaker on the list is New Zealand, followed by China. But first, New Zealand, please.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. I am pleased to be able to contribute to today's discussion. In New Zealand, there are two significant initiatives being undertaken to close the gender pay gap and address the pay equity: the Equal Pay Amendment Bill and the Public Service Gender Pay Gap Action Plan. First, in 2017, aged care worker Christine Bartlett successfully proved that in New Zealand, women working as carers were being underpaid compared to male-dominated occupations that were different but of equal value and of a similar level of skill and responsibility. This resulted in a significant pay rise for 55,000 workers, most of whom were women. However, the process of bringing that pay equity claim was complex and time-consuming. In order to ensure that all women can access equitable pay, we have introduced the Equal Pay Amendment Bill. This sets out a process for resolving pay equity claims and moves the process from the courts to the bargaining table. For us, it is crucial that women in undervalued jobs are able to access the pay equity process, especially for Maori, Pacific, and other minority women. Second, last year, our Minister for Women challenged the public service to lead the way on closing the gender pay gap. We now have a comprehensive three-year action plan which substantially accelerates work to eliminate the gender pay gap. We expect that by proving the public service can take concrete steps to remedy its gender pay gap across organizations that range in size, the private sector will see that they can also take these steps. Some private sector organizations are already doing impressive work in this area, and sharing of best practice has been very useful. We believe that through collaboration and combined efforts such as the ones mentioned today, we can make real progress in ensuring shared prosperity and inclusive development. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. The distinguished delegate from China, please. The floor is yours.
感谢各位的发言。2015年，中国国家主席习近平在全球妇女峰会上提出促进妇女全面发展的4点主张，其中第1条就是推动妇女与经济社会的同步发展，并承诺为发展中国家培训13万名妇女。刚才萨摩亚提到，中国派专家培训当地妇女，提高她们的技能，就是实践的案例。我们将继续努力，全面落实习主席的承诺。借此机会，我简要介绍一下中国的一些做法。一是将妇女全面发展纳入国民经济和社会发展的总体规划。中国第13个国民经济和社会发展5年规划纲要专门设定了促进妇女全面发展一节，提出保障妇女平等获得就学、就业、婚姻、财产和参与社会事务等权利和机会。1995年北京世妇会以来，中国政府连续颁布了3个周期、历时30年的妇女发展纲要，努力完善促进男女平等和妇女全面发展的制度和机制，为中国妇女的全面发展提供了有力的制度保障。2是推动妇女脱贫。中国政府制定实施2011到2020年农村扶贫开发的纲要，其中把妇女作为扶贫的重点群体，提出了教育培训脱贫、巧手创业脱贫、爱心互助脱贫、身心健康脱贫等实际的举措。中国农村的贫困人口从2012年的9899万减少到目前的1660万，其中约1半是妇女。3是促进妇女就业创业。中国政府把妇女平等参与经济、平等就业作为推动妇女发展的优先领域。中国的政府部门印发了关于进一步规范招聘行为、促进妇女就业的通知，明确要坚决纠正就业中的各种性别歧视行为，建立了多部门联合约谈、市场监管、司法救助3条促进妇女就业的救济渠道。中国实施鼓励妇女就业创业的小额担保贷款财政贴息政策，10年间累计发放贷款3837亿多元，财政贴息408亿多元，有近657万人次的妇女获得了这个贷款。中国女性就业人数达到了3.4亿，互联网领域创业中的女性占到了55%。中国愿与各国加强交流合作，共同促进男女平等和包容性的发展。谢谢。
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate. The next speaker on the list is Indonesia. If you can just make a brief intervention, please. It's okay, we can come back if you're ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the panelists for their comprehensive presentation. Just like to share a little bit and that question for one of the panelists. In Indonesia, with regard to the farming, with regard to the women participation in the farming, we integrate all the gender perspective in dealing with how that women can also take part in the farming process. For instance, in the past, maybe women cannot use all these, traditional machines. Now we try to improve the machine that it will be more gender responsive, so that women can also take part in all the farming processes. In the past, women, the health of the women farmers are also very, not very good because they use all these traditional tools or equipments. But now with the gender perspective in the modernization of the farming equipments, they now can invent very good tools so that it can also be increasing the health of the women. So that is one area. And then another area, in rural areas, now the government allocate village fund. This village fund is allocated yearly for the development of the village. And part of the village fund is also geared toward the empowerment of women and girls. And so that is a little bit that I would like to share with regard to our topic today. But I'm interested to know more about the care industry, caregiver industry. You mentioned that now in Malaysia, your organization is also targeting in how women can become child caregiver entrepreneurs. So I'd like to know more about this because that is, I think, one of the hindrances for women to take part in the labor force. I'd like a little bit to share. In Indonesia, our government already issued a ministerial decree in how to increase the gender responsive facilities in the office, so that in each ministry now, they are provided with the child care facilities as well, and lactation room. But I still like to know about this new business in child care. Thank you.
I think we will go back to both the panelists after we go through the first round. We just have two more comments. I'm sure a short comment from Papua New Guinea, and followed by the Center for Women's Resources in Philippines. So Papua New Guinea, please.
Thank you. I firstly apologize for coming late. I just would like to add on, realizing gender equality for women and girls in the Pacific, at least Papua New Guinea, has gone a little further in developing national strategy and enhance opportunity for equal employment in education, social sector, labor, and also in the economic informal sector to small, medium entrepreneurs business. So one area that government has to bridge it, one area that funding from various sources to bridge that. Everyone speaks of their own settings, and sometimes things get easy at some countries and things get a bit complicated at some countries to prosper. So we admit and we accept that. In PNG, number 2 is national strategies about increasing women's access to economic opportunities and awareness in the economic rights. PNG highlighted this as a priority, and we are working on it. We have done informal economy, and 80% of these women got involved. And surprisingly, there's huge cash in the informal sector, and we really working around the clock to bridge that gap so that at least few of that 80% can be taken on board by small to medium entrepreneurs. And the wages, both the minimum wage bill has been passed in Parliament, so everyone is paid the same as with women folks who are in that same workforce. So at least, we're gradually moving together with our Pacific, but our setting is different from the other Asian countries, but hopefully we can get there. Sometimes we talk on a bigger level that we don't reach the rural areas into certain level to participate well and get moving. Thanks.
We note your this thing on progressive realization, but clearly this is an urgency that you have recognized and you're taking steps. Thank you very much, sir. May I move on to the next speaker, who just a short intervention, I'm sure, a question from the Center for Women's Resources in Philippines.
Good morning. My name is Celito Perez, and I speak on behalf of the civil society. The current neoliberal economic system means that governments have failed to protect the rights of women and girls in the world of work. The inclusion of the private sector, as mentioned by one of the panelists this morning, will only perpetuate multinational corporations' access to women's unpaid and overworked labor, while also continuing the exploitation of patriarchal gender dynamics that burden girls and women. So more private sector involvement is not the solution, but recognizing and redistributing women's unpaid work is. Legislating and implementing the ILO living wage agenda, addressing gendered labor market segregation and gender pay gap is what needs to be done. We feel more can be said of coverage of informal, including home workers, migrant workers, and refugees, stateless people, regardless of status, in labor legislation, universal social protection, as well as the ratification of C-189. We urge the member states to ensure the primacy of women's human rights in the world of work, because if women stops, the world stops. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, representatives of civil society. I think we'll come back to our panelists for the last words. I'll start in reverse order because the question was asked from the delegate from Indonesia. First, Estrella, about the comment on from Indonesia, and plus any last words from you very quickly. 2 minutes for each panelist, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your additional inputs on how you are empowering the women farmers in Indonesia. Actually, our member there, Aliansi Petani Indonesia, is very much in partnership with the Ministry of Village for this empowerment funds at the village level. And we are building the capacities of the farmers in the village so that they can speak up also in terms of where they want the funds to go for their own empowerment. And it is really good that you are integrating the gender perspective. I think it's also one of the things that we want many countries and even in our own farmers' organizations to do, to integrate the gender perspective. Farmers are men and women, young and old, but to be gender sensitive means to really look into the specificities, the particularities, and the barriers, the constraints that especially women face, and then try to resolve. For the Papua New Guinea, I would like to make a comment. In many of the organizations of women who are into business, we can classify them as micro, small, and medium enterprises, especially those farmers, women farmers who are organized into cooperatives or in groups of 10 or 15, but already producing and also having a business, putting the market. So we hope that the governments can really have policies that promote and incentivize and also encourage these micro, small, and medium enterprises. And finally, we want also to see that cooperatives, especially cooperatives of family farmers, are private sector in nature. And when we say private sector, we don't only say these big companies. But if we want the private sector to be investing in sustainable development, maybe we should look at the family farmers cooperatives as a private sector too.
Thank you very much, Estrella. Nadia.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Indonesia, for the question and interest. I think if we look at generally, the barriers for women entrepreneurs would be skills and access to financing, right? But we see that, by getting them to participate in childcare and growing them as childcare entrepreneurs can be done in stages. What's very important to note and how we're actually doing it is that I'd like to also share to other member states, the UN Women has introduced the Women Empowerment Principles. And I think this is a great opportunity for the public sectors to come in and bridge the gap for entrepreneurs, particularly in the areas of childcare, right? So if we look at innovative ways to deliver care work, right, particularly in the areas of childcare again, they could come in at different stages. They could be skilled and certified as nannies with the right kind of mindset of building themselves or growing themselves to become a childcare entrepreneurs eventually, right? And having corporate organizations embracing the WEP principles will allow us to not just gain access to market through the private sector players by putting in policies or even benefits for employees, by taking in new ways of providing childcare, right? This will also help the women entrepreneurs to start and grow at different stages. So this is where I think we can start growing. And it's a three-way work, of CSOs, identifying the right women, getting the government to put in newer regulations, and corporates to come in, provide access to market, as well as financing. And I think this can be a way forward for us to grow more women in the children's economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jayesh, a quick,
yes,
very, very brief.
Sure. So first of all, I'm very glad that the framework that I spoke about is something quite similar to what many other countries have also attempted to do. So 3 specific observations. One is, as was pointed out by the member from Japan, member from New Zealand, about having laws in place and implementing them well. Laws which encourage private companies to give jobs to women, guarantees a career for women, provide decent wages to them, equal wages to them. That has worked well. Second, as representative from China pointed out, the importance of training for capacity building is again something which has helped that country achieve scale and large numbers. And again, as pointed out by member from China, and also from Indonesia, which is of having dedicated funds. So village fund, which she spoke about, having a separate budget for promoting women entrepreneurship, as was pointed out by China. So these 3 things, having an institutional mechanism, working on capacity building, and then creating specific dedicated opportunities in some way is also at the bottom of the framework that I spoke about. And I believe that this is very clearly a proven way of promoting entrepreneurship and innovation amongst the women.
Thank you so much for putting a framework. Doreen, the whole issue of the SDGs being really a whole of society approach, and how your approach really brings together the social sector, the private sector, if you can expand.
Through innovative finance, and in specific the Women's Livelihood Bond that we're working on, we are touching on 5 different SDG goals. And as a matter of fact, of course, SDG 5, women being number 1, but also hunger, partnership, climate action, and the list goes on. It is imperative for us to understand, if we're going to meet the SDG goals, we have to think about scale. We have to think about how to effectively bring more women into the financial markets so they can actually be equal participants. So I applaud what the member from Japan and also member from China, who both acknowledge the whole notion of scale, and then also obviously the private sector coming in. It has been very interesting for us with the journey of creating such an innovative financial tool, because even in the General Assembly a few weeks ago, we got 4 different awards and for various SDG goals that Women's Livelihood Bond is achieving. But our work has only begun, and we need all of you to be a part of it. We need to effectively connect the back street of the underserved communities to the Wall Streets of the world. And we have the power to do so. So I hope you will join us in this journey and catalyze women to be part of the financial system.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Your Excellency, what would be your top-line message?
I believe that the empowerment of women is the empowerment of a nation. And there are two significant instruments towards that empowerment. One is health. A healthy woman is a wealthy woman. Two, education. Health and education together of our women will enhance their capacity, and they will be independently empower themselves. And through their empowerment, the nation also will be empowered. Thank you.
That's wonderful words on which to end this panel. Madam Chair, I have enjoyed moderating it, and I hope these wonderful group of people, and I think, can I ask for a big round of applause for what's been a very charismatic panel here. Madam Chair will now take over proceedings.
Thank you, Dr. Tata, and thank you to all the panelists for an interesting and very informative panel discussion on inclusive development, shared prosperity, and decent work. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the second panel discussion for the day on realizing gender equality for women and girls in the thematic area of freedom from violence, stigma, and stereotypes. We will review key issues regarding the advancement of gender equality and empowerment of women in the area of freedom from violence, stigma, and stereotypes. The discussion will be moderated by Ms. Bandana Rana of Nepal, Vice Chair of the UN CEDAW Committee. I invite Ms. Rana and the panelists to take their seats, and for the moderator to introduce the distinguished panelists and initiate the panel discussion. Ms. Rana, you have the floor.
After the panel.
Since there's since there's four of you, maybe you want to sit here. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. No, sorry, no, she's not. they're still pinned in the wrong. That's okay. No, you sent it to them already a couple of times, so apologies if it doesn't come right away, but we'll ask them to then. So we have Vietnam, there's no, we asked them where is it? You didn't send the last one that you sent to me. This is the one that I sent to you. There you go. I just confirmed with you that when who is Ministerial, then you say it's the chair. You tell them you limit to one. The chair of the committee. Yes, I told you. Okay, let's see. Can you bandana B-A-N-D-A bandana Rama yes. Okay, so Miss Ian, yes, you'll be here. And Kim? Sorry. Kim will be here. Miss Ian here. Veronica here. The first speaker is yes. Maybe she's okay, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that's a way too. There we go. Yeah. There we go. I have to ask him. Yes. Miss Ian, I want to say hello. Yes. Yes. And hello. Also, when you present the trade service. Thank you for being with us. Okay, so Veronica, I think you should sit in that chair, yeah? Is this the mic I use? And you will need the, everybody has the translation device, yes. The last session ended a little bit late, so maybe we'll give them a chance to come back in and we'll start in just a minute. You let me know when. Okay. We won't get time later. Take the pictures of all of us. Thank you.
We're supposed to have a tea break, and then we convene. Because now everyone's gone out for coffee. Everyone's gone for tea break. Yeah, I think that's required.
My apologies, we'll start in a few minutes because I think the session before this went extra time, so there are many who are having a tea break, but we are ushering them in, so then we will start soon.
Maybe I'll shorten my introduction.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, not so much for you inside, it's more for those outside. I don't know if they'll be able to hear me, but if you could please return to the conference room. The panel is soon to begin. We hope to have participants in the room seated. We have a very interesting panel, I'm sure. So hopefully you can come and take your places as soon as possible.
trying to get everybody in.
Just let me know when I should start.
Yes. To make announcement.
It was 1 hour or something, but now it is 1 hour.
Yes, we need to finish at 2. We need to finish at 12. So we will have 1 hour and 10 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes if we start.
I think we should start with 2 minutes. Huh? Okay, I'll tell you. Just now.
She told me she would tell me when to start. Should I start now? You want me to start? Okay, no, you tell me. Yeah, all right.
1 minute, I'll start. I'll just say. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please settle down, the panel is ready to start. Please sit down and the panel will start. Thank you.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, my name is Bandana Rana. I'm from Nepal. I've been a women's rights activist since the Beijing conference. I also am in the CEDAW committee now, and it gives me great pleasure and honor to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to this very important panel on ending violence against women, stigma and stereotype, as part of the Beijing+25 Asia-Pacific Ministerial Level Conference. We have very interesting panelists of diverse background and from different countries who will share their key insights about violence against women, effective approaches to preventing and eliminating violence, sexual harassment in the workplace, the role of young people in changing social norms, as well as priority actions to accelerate the progress we have made thus far. We will then open the floor for questions and brief interventions from the floor. Our panelists are professionals and experts in their fields, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce them to you. Our first panelist is Huang Thi Tu Nguyen, Vice Director of the Gender Equality Department of the Ministry of Labor, Invalids, and Social Affairs in Vietnam. In Vietnam, there has been notable progress across areas of coordinated services, prevention of violence against women, data collection and use, and addressing violence against women across parts of Vietnam, and we are very much looking forward to hearing from her. Our next speaker is Kim Henderson, Director of Policy and Evaluation of Our Watch, Australia. Our Watch has supported a range of pioneering approaches to preventing violence against women and their children in schools, in workplaces, with media, with men and young people. And so we have asked Kim to share their approaches and what is the cutting edge in this space. We recognize that prevention of violence against women is a critical area where we need to test and learn, and the message among global experts is that we need to go beyond awareness raising. Beijing+25 is all about generation equality, involving the youth. And we are very honored to have a youth panelist, Veronika Fonova, a youth activist and founder of KazFem feminist group. Veronika brings unique perspectives to sexual harassment and violence in the workplace. This deserves attention, particularly because workplaces present opportunities to challenge the acceptance of violence for large populations. And I would just like to set the stage for this very interesting panel by sharing with you that I had the honor of attending the Beijing conference in 1995 as a very young, thriving journalist in a male-dominated media. So the Beijing conference was eye-opening for me, enriching for me, but most importantly, that there was where the seed for my activism was sown. And since then, there has been no looking back, and I have been engaged at the local, national, regional, and global level on advocacy to ending violence against women. It is because also of that, for that reason that I'm truly honored and to be a part of this very important panel on ending violence against women, the most important component of it, stigma and stereotype. We know, and then looking back 25 years, when I look at that time, even in my personal journey, the issues that we committed to, and I would actually personally look back and say, have we made progress? And to tell you honestly, yes, we have. I had not envisaged the kind of progress that we would have made 25 years now, because you see, the voices have been amplified. Women have been institutionalized from diverse backgrounds, diverse countries. Issues such as sexual and reproductive health rights is at the center stage. Women know how to get mobilized. Movement building has strengthened. Advocacy has strengthened, but predominantly implementation. The gap between the policies and the implementation is immense. So we will, of course, not talk about problems today, but we will talk more about best practices, effective approaches, and lessons learned so that we can take some lessons back home to see how we can address stereo and stigma. At present, at the normative level, the right of women to be free from violence is recognized as an international human rights standard, but in practice, violence against women and girls continues to be tolerated and has become normalized in many societies. Violence against women is firmly rooted in gender inequality, discrimination, and predominantly harmful cultural and social norms. Over 37% of women in South Asia, 40% of women in Southeast Asia, and up to 68% of women in the Pacific have experienced physical and/or sexual violence at the hands of their husbands and partners. But predominantly, the violence that women face is silenced. The culture of silence still flourishes, and this actually encourages perpetrators to engage in more and more violence. As we know, violence against women has serious consequences, which often prevent women and girls from fully participating in and contributing to society. Violence significantly undermines women's educational and employment opportunities, income earning capability, and advancement in the workplace, which greatly limits the realization of their full potential. Violence is a major impediment to women's empowerment, gender equality, and the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals of leaving no one behind. Violence often happens across a range of settings. It occurs firstly at home, in workplaces, in public and online spaces, in conflict and humanitarian crisis, and can culminate in femicide, the murder of women and girls. Online violence, sexual harassment in the workplace, these are growing areas with a high demand and issues of great interest in this region that we are yet to explore collectively to address these issues in an efficient way. Today's thematic panel revolves around these issues, and we will discuss best practices for prevention and the immediate need for concrete action points that address negative gender stereotyping and stigmatization. We look forward to the inputs of each of our panelists with regard to these key issues. And now I would like to start the panel discussion, I would like to turn to our first speaker, Hoang Thi Thu Nguyen from Vietnam. I would like to open the panel with a question to you. What are the priority actions and necessary steps to accelerate progress in the areas of ending violence against women, including to ensure best practices for survivor-centered response, justice, and prevention? What have you learned?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. In Vietnam, is very honored to be here to share with all of you about the Vietnam experience about preventing and combating the violence against women. And as the chair is sharing about the situation of the violence against women in our regions, like Vietnam also in this case, and we are now beside on the working on prevention mechanisms, like for example, safe city and male engagement to combating violence against women. We also to involve in the global joint program on essential service package for women and girls who facing violence against women. And compared with the previous reviewing is implementing the Beijing platform for action in Vietnam, all the line ministries, agencies in Vietnam to have the more capabilities involved in the preventing and combating violence against women. And now we are to coordinate to the four line ministries namely is the Ministry of the Labor and Social Affairs, the Ministry of Justice, and Ministry of Police, Public Security, and Ministry of the Health. And we are to maintaining how to bring the essential service for women and girls in order to all cases of violence against women can be solved. And right now we maintain the working group on coordination, and we all each quarter we have meeting and in order to discuss how to develop and implementing the plan of action of each sector. In each sector in this program, about the justice and policing sectors, and also in the service, social service sector, and also health sectors. I think that all four components have also apply in other countries in order to support for women and girls to suffer from violence against women. And in Vietnam, we know that we highly appreciate that all the tools and standards to how to bring the minimum standards package service for women and girls who suffer from the violence against women. And now we also to bring locality in one province in Vietnam in order to know that how to extend to change this, when to bring the support for this. And we support for the province to design the joint plan of action for this in the program. And we also to take the research on the baseline survey as a beginning, and also right now we have two year, so we have the and the end-line survey. And right now we at the moment is the end of the periods in order to know how to change this, when to apply this service. We are a lot of take many time to discuss with line ministries, and for example in the police. Also, we design the capacity buildings for the police to support for when we receive the case in the violence against women. How to support for the survivors, and also in order to the case can to be solved. And now we think that in this, when 2 years to apply the joint program, we think that we receive the strong commitment from the government, but both national level and local level, in the combating the end of the violence against women. And we also to enforce the legal legislation with the sound policy, and to address the violence against women. Vietnam designed the program on the national program onto the preventing and combating the gender-based violence against women. So, and when we do the design and the activity, we also do support for this. And we also to have the many research in terms of the how to the find out the gap between the laws and practice. Went to the support for the women's and girls, but many challenges in it went to this program, and we know that the a big gap between the implementation in the practice and also the awareness and skill of the officer to in charge of the in response for the violence against women in all sectors, in both in the police and the healthcare sector and the social support for the events unlimited. And sometimes they can do the thing that the like to the gender stereotype and this in this and when to deal with this case. And also the coordination is very hard. I think that is a beginning is as an easy work, can to the meet each other and to the contact with the focal points of each sectors, and also to make in the report for all the sector, and also to the inform them in how to language when to bring the service. But it is very difficult, and when if the focal point not to the supportive and not to the active, and so the very difficult when to the connect for all the service. And it's one more thing. We think that the Vietnam has still the limited human and financial report for this, and so we meet many big difficulties. And what we learned from the how to in this is issues. We think that we learned that the coordination capacities of the essential support service package for the women's violence is very important. And also the capacity for the whole sector in addressing the violence. And for example, in Vietnam, we have to highlight the support from the social society and also the youth movement, and in order to support us the mainly the in principle in law and to the in the practice, and and also the continue prevention policy. For example, the male investments and also community-based prevention is very important. And one more thing, we think that the data for the evals is maintain the research on the survey on the violence against women, and also revise the national gender development indicator in the adapt on how to know that the all case of violence against women is very important. And now we have received the new funding for the third phase for the joint program on the ESP. So what we think that is all our efforts and all the expectation can to the scaling up for in order to the support for women and girls in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoen, for your positive sharing. Time is always a challenge, so I'm sorry to cut you down. But I mean, we are privileged and honored to have representatives of several member states here. And as a CEDAW committee member, when we review the reports of member states and engage in constructive dialogue, one of the issues that comes up is lack of coordination between different sectors. And that is what I think the Vietnam presentation pointed out about strengthening coordination, collaboration between different sectors, justice, police, social, and health sector as well. And building partnerships. You did talk about engaging men and boys. Data was thought to be very important. And the other very significant gap is also the gap between laws and policies and the implementation. So you also talked about mechanisms for enforced legislation with sound policies. So I hope these were some helpful learning to take it forward. So now I would like to turn to our next speaker, Ms. Kim Henderson from Australia. She's from Our Watch, which is advancing national level practice and evidence in Australia on prevention of violence against women. Can you tell us what progress has been achieved in preventing and eliminating violence against women and girls, and what is the latest evidence and thinking regarding effective approaches? 7 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and my fellow panelists, thank you very much for the question, Bandana. I think we're going to hear some common themes, as we've heard from the previous speaker, but in Australia, we are driving progress through having a specialised agency for primary prevention, Our Watch, to build evidence, through a focus on primary prevention in policy, and through a national coordinated approach. So to tell you a little bit more about Our Watch and what we do, we're a national independent organisation working to prevent violence against women. We were established in 2013 when the Council of Australian Governments, under the National Plan to Reduce Violence Against Women and Their Children, 2010 to 2022, identified the need for a national prevention organisation independent from government. So we work solely on primary prevention with a whole-of-population approach. And the focus of our work is on evidence development, policy advice to governments, support and tools for practitioners and communities, and social marketing campaigns and media work. We have a foundational document which is called Change the Story. It guides our work, and it's also been adopted as the national framework for primary prevention by all governments in Australia. It's a national framework for long-term collaborative action to help move us from isolated small-scale projects to a more coordinated national systemic approach across all jurisdictions and all sectors. In Change the Story, we identified the need for a whole-of-population gendered approach, but we also identified that we need to address intersecting structures of power, privilege and oppression. So we subsequently developed another foundational document which focused on preventing violence against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women and their children, called Changing the Picture. And Changing the Picture shows that the ongoing impacts of colonisation for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people create additional intersecting drivers, such as racism, for example, alongside the gendered drivers. We're continuing to grow our evidence base on intersecting drivers, and currently in partnership with Women with Disabilities Victoria, we're developing a conceptual model on the drivers of violence against women with disabilities. Just to tell you a little bit more about the gendered drivers, Change the Story draws on the socio-ecological model and a public health approach, and identifies that gender inequality sets a necessary social context for violence against women to occur. And this manifests itself through 4 key drivers, which you see up on the screen. The good news about this is it also identifies corresponding actions which can address each of these 4 drivers. In addition, it outlines what we call contributing factors, which increase to the frequency and severity of violence, but are not underlying drivers. Alcohol is one, for example, that's often talked about. So in Change the Story, what we identified is that, well, implementing policies to reduce harmful use of alcohol will be helpful and will likely decrease frequency and severity. If we don't address the underlying gendered drivers, we won't make progress on preventing violence against women. So the 4 drivers will be quite familiar to you. Condoning of violence, victim blaming, what was she wearing, where was she? Men's control of decision-making and limits to women's independence, stereotype constructions of masculinity and femininity, and disrespect towards women that occurs through male peer bonding. To give you some brief examples of the work we're doing to address those drivers and implement the actions that you see on the screen, around condoning of violence, we're working with national media organisations to work with journalists to build their capacity to report ethically and fairly without excusing perpetrators, without blaming victims. Around men's control of decision-making and limits to women's independence. We're advising governments on policies, structural policy changes, some of which have been talked about in previous sessions around gender pay gap, feminisation of particular segments of the workforce, more women in political participation and other decision-making roles. Around constructions of masculinity and femininity, we launched a social marketing campaign called Because Why, working with parents of preschool-aged children to expand their thinking on what it means to be a girl or a boy, what occupations, what interests girls and boys can have. And finally, on disrespect through male peer bonding and aggression towards women, just last month we launched a new paper on looking at the link between dominant forms of masculinity and the gendered drivers. And this paper, called Men in Focus, also outlines 12 principles for how we can work with men and boys in preventing violence against women. We also focus very strongly on monitoring and evaluation. Being an emerging field in primary prevention, it's really important to capture the learnings from our work. So we developed a national level monitoring framework called Counting on Change. This is a companion piece to Change the Story, and it provides detailed guidance on how to measure population-level progress towards the prevention of violence against women in Australia. It outlines the expected process of change, identifies process, medium and long-term indicators of change. It highlights data collection processes and also gaps in data sets, identifies key elements of prevention monitoring, and it emphasises the importance of an intersectional approach to monitoring. And we've graphically represented this in this pyramid here. So you see at the top, we have longer term measures around prevalence. In the middle, the drivers and contributing factors. And at the bottom, we have process measures, which is the basic infrastructure that we say governments need to invest in order to achieve results further up the pyramid. So the guide supports the collection of data against these measures by providing indicators and potential data sets that could be used to report against the indicators. I just want to highlight that although it relies on Australian data sources, it has been developed with an international audience in mind. And for the Australian report, we'll be focusing on our data sources, but we've aligned this with the SDGs. So for example, if you look at the domain around attitudes towards violence against women and gender equality, this can be demonstrated through the UNICEF Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey. If we look at the other one around women in managerial positions, well, we have a national data source. Internationally, this is captured through SDG 5.5.2. I just want to highlight also that this monitoring and evaluation framework is underpinned by the theory of change, which is outlined in the diagram on the screen. And essentially what that says is that successful primary prevention efforts take long-term and sustained investment. We don't expect to see drops in prevalence rates then for 20 plus years after we've invested in the grey boxes down the bottom. In the meantime, however, it gives us markers of progress against which we can measure our efforts. Notably, looking at the purple box in the middle, you'll see that we predict as primary prevention efforts start to take hold, we're likely to see an increase in reporting. And again, this is another way that we emphasise the point that many people often focus on prevalence rates, but lifetime prevalence in particular isn't likely to drop for the long term, and even 12-month prevalence rates will take some time to shift. But that doesn't mean we're not making progress. So these markers of progress can be really effective in both helping us know how our work is having an impact, but also in advocating for long-term investment and change. And the other point to make is this also requires increased investment in response services and early intervention and tertiary response. And so we also advocate always for prevention alongside response investment, not one at the expense of the other. So we're very excited that we're actually at the point now of trying to implement this monitoring and evaluation framework in Australia. And for the first time, we'll be putting this measurement framework into practice. I think I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to skip through the methodology, and people can talk to me afterwards if they'd like more information on that, just to what we've learnt so far in going through that process of implementation. So the strengths of the approach we've found have been using indicators other than just prevalence, as I just mentioned. It helps demonstrate the scale and diversity of effort needed. It also helps identify critical gaps in our national data sets. And finally, it shows evidence for the need for long-term investment, cross-sectoral work, and need for work at the systems level. It also provides a degree of accountability, which I think is really important in the context of this review of the Beijing Platform for Action. How are we going to remain accountable for our investments and our efforts? And finally, I just want to highlight its applicability in the international context. So how might you go about implementing this in your own country in this region? So we can see that even in less resourced contexts, governments can also look at measuring investment in the grey boxes. If you don't have extensive national level data sets yet, that's a place that you could start. In addition, we could use existing regional and global frameworks and efforts to report against the SDGs that are already happening to feed into this kind of national level monitoring. And two of the frameworks for this region might be R for Respect and also the ASEAN regional guidelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kim. Very interesting, very innovative. I'm sure we can learn a lot from this presentation. Due to lack of time, I don't want to attempt to summarize a presentation, but just to say that, many times we are engaged in formulating policies, laws, or in advocating for needed policies and laws, but we lack evidence to substantiate the need for those policies and changes. And I think you presented very innovative ways about how you can use evidence. So I think it was all about, inspiring change. It was about influencing change, and it was about monitoring change, also about the frameworks that can be replicated and applied across diverse sectors. Okay, thank you so much, Kim. And now we move on to a very important youth activist. Veronika Fonova, you have spoken out about experiencing workplace harassment as a young woman. Can you reflect on what needs to be done to better address workplace violence? Why is sexual harassment a concern for young women? You are also a youth leader. What is being done by youth to challenge the acceptance of violence against women and girls? And Ms. Veronika will speak in Russian. So if you need your interpretation, please put on your things. Thank you. Ms. Veronika.
Добрый день. Я очень благодарна за возможность поделиться своей историей и своим опытом. Спасибо также за вопрос. Да, действительно, молодые женщины очень часто переживают ситуации харассмента, обесценивания и различных сексуальных домогательств на рабочих местах. И, к сожалению, на данный момент существует множество барьеров и препятствий, с которыми сталкиваются молодые женщины, когда они хотят противостоять этому. Я хочу рассказать на примере своего опыта, как это все произошло в моем случае, и рассказать, почему именно было довольно сложно бороться с этим, и было сложно уйти и противостоять начальству. Я по профессии занимаюсь дизайном, веб-дизайном, и в предыдущем агентстве я проработала 4 года. И во время первого года, который я там работала, я очень часто получала обесценивающих комментарии сексуального характера, но каждый раз, честно говоря, я пропускала это мимо ушей, и я молчала. я ничего не говорила, потому что мне было очень страшно потерять эту работу. Очень важно обратить внимание на то, что молодые женщины находятся в ситуации двойного риска, так как они боятся осуждения от общества и также боятся потерять финансовую независимость, так как это незамужние молодые женщины, которым приходится проходить более сложный путь, чем мужчинам, потому что мы знаем, что на рабочих местах все еще существует дискриминация. В моем случае в дальнейшем начались очень неприятные ситуации со стороны именно начальства. И когда ты получаешь комментарии сексуального характера от начальства, от человека, от которого ты зависишь финансово, и рискуешь потерять свою работу и репутацию, и испортить свою карьеру в дальнейшем, то это делает буквально ситуацию безвыходной. Я помню, что когда я работала в компании уже на протяжении 2 лет, я пришла на встречу, там находился мой начальник и также менеджер. Менеджер предложил взять меня с собой на встречу с клиентами, так как я очень хорошо выгляжу, как он сказал, и, возможно, им будет легче принять решение. Начальник посмотрел на меня и сказал: да, действительно, но сейчас мы ее не возьмем, потому что ей нужно вставить грудь. И спросил у меня: Вероника, может быть, ты увеличишь грудь? И это было ужасно. В дальнейшем я и моя коллега, мы не раз получали предложение о том, чтобы сфотографироваться без одежды, то есть с обнаженной грудью для наших социальных сетей. Представляете, мы сотрудницы веб-агентства, которые делают сайты, приложения, рекламу. Мы получали такие предложения, действительно. Конечно, мы отказывались, он настаивал. И потом он оправдывался, что это все были шутки. Но последней каплей стало то, что мой начальник, опубликовал в социальные сети нашего веб-агентства фотографию полуобнаженной сотрудницы. И там были такие комментарии, как «она готова на эксперименты» и все ее контакты. В тот же день я подошла к нему и сказала, что я увольняюсь, потому что это переходило уже все рамки. Он в очень грубой форме со мной поговорил и сказал, что это совершенно не мое дело. И это было ужасно. Я дала 4 года этой работе, и я понимала, что я совершенно ничего не могу сделать, абсолютно. Я не знаю, куда идти, я не знаю, что с этим делать. И только спустя несколько лет я узнала, что мои коллеги переживали то же самое с его стороны. Например, моя подруга, которая на праздничном выезде на природу рассказала мне о том, что он трогал ее за бедро. И никто не знал об этом, и никто не говорил об этом, потому что действительно молодые женщины находятся в очень опасной ситуации и боятся рисковать своей работой, и боятся рисковать своей карьерой. Потом, когда я ушла с работы, я нашла устроилась на другую работу в международное агентство, но эта ситуация не отпускала меня. И я испытывала такие переживания, потому что другие девушки тоже переживают это. И я решила публично рассказать об этой ситуации. Я рассказала об этом в своем Фейсбуке и в своем Инстаграме. И буквально спустя пару дней я начала получать угрозы от начальства, угрозы от юристов из своего агентства. Они требовали удалить это, требовали сделать опровержение и угрожали мне судом. Но я понимала, что об этих ситуациях надо говорить. И я получила очень много поддержки. И я думаю, что только это помогло мне в этой ситуации, поддержка других женщин. И я хочу обратить внимание на то, что женщинам очень важно поддерживать друг друга, и только это остановило мое начальство от дальнейших действий, потому что они увидели, что юристки, правозащитницы, они поддерживают меня, действительно, они готовы встать за меня, и девушки с моей работы, они увидели, что я говорю об этом публично, и они сказали: да, мы придем в суд, и мы расскажем о том, что было, мы скажем правду. И перед тем, как ехать сюда, я провела опрос в нашей группе, группе КАСФЕМ. Мы занимаемся публичными мероприятиями мы рассказываем девушкам об их правах. И я провела опрос, я попросила рассказать их о ситуациях, подобных на работе. И, честно говоря, я была просто шокирована, потому что то, что случилось со мной, это не самое страшное. Молодые девушки в университетах, в учебных местах, на работе, они переживают страшные, действительно страшные вещи. Мужчины кладут им руки на колени, делают предложения сексуального характера, всячески обесценивают. И это наносит действительно тяжелые психологические травмы и мешают женщинам двигаться вверх по карьерной лестнице. И мы не можем об этом говорить, потому что мы не знаем, как именно об этом сказать, куда именно нужно пойти, какие у нас есть права. И поэтому я считаю, что очень важно говорить об этом, привлекать к этому внимание и создавать инициативные группы и механизмы, которые бы работали с этим, создавать их везде, на рабочих местах, в учебных заведениях, чтобы они следили действительно за выполнением этих законов и этих правил. Сейчас в моей стране действительно есть девушки, которые говорят о сексуальном насилии, но я хочу, чтобы все понимали о том, что о насилии на рабочем месте говорить сложнее, потому что здесь идет двойная стигма. Мы не знаем, как реагирует общество. Ну, вернее, мы знаем, что, возможно, общество снова осудит женщин и снова оправдает мужчин тем, что женщина провоцировала или была не так одета, не так себя вела. Поэтому я очень хочу попросить вас поддерживать других женщин и объединяться, потому что солидарность может побороть многое. Спасибо.
Thank you so much, Veronica. She has pointed out a number of issues. Stigma in the workplace, stereotyping in the workplace, the intimidation, the threat that young girls face in the workplace, and a lot of other issues. So I think we should actually give her a louder round of applause, not just her, but the other panelists also, for being so... I thank her for being brave, bold, and beautiful inside out, and for establishing your organization, which is doing such innovative work. So with that, we will now open the floor for brief interventions. If you would raise your flag, I do have a list of member states' representatives already listed out here. May I ask France, the distinguished delegate from France? Are you here? All right. Then I turn to distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you for this opportunity to comment. I totally agree with what Ms. Veronica said, and those things are also happening in our country. So violence against women is a serious crime and violation of human rights. The issue of violence against women has not yet been resolved, and Japan is well aware that we cannot even start discussing women's empowerment when this problem remains. And now is the time to deal with such unresolved issues if we are to further increase opportunities for women to participate and act as agents of change. Firstly, in line with this awareness, in 2017, we revised its penal code aiming to address the realities of sexual crime according to the circumstances of each case. The revisions included redefining the actions constituting rape and amending the statutory penalty. At the same time, further penal provisions were added, such as those establishing the new crimes of indecency or sexual acts by parents or guardians. Also, the provision requiring filing of criminal complaints by victims was deleted. And secondly, we addressed violence perpetuated online by instituting a new Revenge Porno Prevention Act in 2014 to punish posting of sexual images online forums and so on, without the consent of the person shown in the images. In 2016, Anti-Stalking Act was amended to add messages sent via social media and comments on blogs and other personal web pages on the actions constituting stalking behavior that are regulated by the Act. Finally, To support survivors, nationwide helpline for survivors of sexual crimes was set up in 2017, and in 2019, helpline became available free of charge 24 hours a day. In another measure, one-stop support centers for survivors of sexual crimes and sexual violence were set up in all 47 prefectures across Japan to provide physical and psychological care and treatment by doctors and support survivors by accompanying them during reporting to the police and judicial authorities. We are determined to continue its unremitting effort to eradicate violence against women and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Japan, for your sharing. And may I now turn over to the distinguished delegate from, Japan. May I now request the distinguished delegate from Myanmar, please. And I would appreciate if our distinguished delegates would limit their interventions to not more than 2 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We welcome this opportunity to share Myanmar's endeavors. Myanmar government is convinced that violence against women is a serious issue that impedes women from living a dignified life, maximizing their capabilities, and contributing to and benefiting from the country's progress. Therefore, Myanmar has zero-tolerance policy on violence against women and girls and is committed to end all forms of violence. Myanmar has drafted a bill to address violence against women and the prevention and protection of violence against women law. And this bill will be enacted within a few months. We have recently enacted the new child rights law, in which a child is defined as under 18 years of age. The new child rights law also contains protection of boys and girls from conflict-related violence. We are also drafting a bill concerned with the sex workers and child protection policy. All of these measures addressing discrimination and violence issues against women and girl child. To address violence related to trafficking, Myanmar has already enacted an anti-trafficking in person law, and in which special protection of traffic victims, women, children, and youth includes. We are now prioritizing on the information dissemination of these existing laws so that all the stakeholders, including the judges, police, and public, could better understand the legal protection measures and ensure rule of law. To fulfill the demand for reliable data and to inform policymakers and programmers to address violence against women and girls, Government of Myanmar plans to conduct 3 years national strategy on violence against women and girls from 2019 to 2021. This study will help gather data in line with the SDG indicators. Myanmar has also committed to pay special attention to conflict-related sexual and gender-based violence perpetrated against women and girls in conflict-affected areas. In December 2018, a joint communique was signed between the UN and Myanmar government, which requires the Myanmar authorities to implement specific time-bound commitments that include the issuance of clear orders through chains of command, prohibiting sexual violence and accountability for breaching these orders, as well as timely investigation of alleged abuses. The National Committee has been formed and the draft action plan has been formulated to implement the joint communique. As Myanmar is strengthening the policy and legal frameworks, it has put equal emphasis on survivor-centered approach in providing all kinds of services to the survivors. The government of Myanmar has introduced several services such as direct assistance to survivors in the form of cash transfers, case management, hotline, helpline services, one-stop crisis centers, and one-stop women support centers. These endeavors are supported by different development partners and civil society organizations. And we also have developed standard operating procedure to manage all cases of violence against women under the national case management systems. And we recognize the violence against women is a continuous challenge. With the change in time and technology, new forms of violence can emerge. The cybercrime against women, hate speeches, and promoting gender-responsive media will be our focus in the coming years. And Myanmar government recognizes the importance of civil society organizations and development partners' contribution to combat violence against women and girls. And it will continue to be strong partnership and work in collaboration with these entities. Lastly, I would like to reaffirm Myanmar's commitments to the implementation of United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, commitments to the implementation of Joint Communique, commitment to UNHCR 1325 and its sister resolutions. Myanmar, as a new democratic country, is committed at all levels to accelerate its initiatives to eliminate violence against women and girls. It welcomes technical and financial support from our development partners and UN agencies. And at the end, I shall see very less men in this room and none in the panel. It is important that you make men part of these process and dialogues, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Myanmar, for your very important commitments, and particularly for expressing your compliance to CEDAW. I agree, we have few men, and I think member states need to take more initiative to engage men in this area. Thank you so much. May I now turn to the distinguished delegate from France, and I also want to say that we are looking forward to the Generation Equality Conference on Beijing+25 in France next year in July. Distinguished delegate of France.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will speak in French, if you will. La France remercie les panélistes pour leur présentation sur les progrès réalisés pour combattre les violences à l'égard des femmes et des filles, mais également sur les progrès qu'il reste à réaliser. Les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles sont l'une des violations des droits de l'homme les plus enracinées et les plus répandues dans l'ensemble de nos sociétés et sont encore trop souvent tolérées sans que leurs auteurs ne soient inquiétés. Ces violences fondées sur le genre entretiennent les inégalités et ont ainsi un effet dissuasif pour la participation des femmes à la vie en société. Alors qu'aujourd'hui, plus d'une femme sur 3 est victime au cours de sa vie d'une forme de violence fondée sur son genre, qu'il s'agisse de mariage forcé, de mutilation sexuelle, de violences domestiques ou encore de harcèlement sexuel dans les espaces publics ou en ligne, il est urgent d'agir. La lutte contre les violences faites aux femmes est l'une des principales priorités de la diplomatie féministe de la France. Elle porte ce combat au sein de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies et dans le cadre de ses autres responsabilités internationales. En France, au niveau domestique, le gouvernement et la secrétaire d'État à l'égalité, Madame Marlène Schiappa, viennent d'organiser une mobilisation historique en faveur de la lutte contre les violences au terme du Grenelle des violences conjugales. À l'occasion du 25e anniversaire de l'adoption de la déclaration et de la plateforme d'action de Pékin, la France, avec ONU Femmes et le gouvernement du Mexique, a décidé de faire de la lutte contre les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles l'une des priorités du Forum Génération Égalité, qui se tiendra au Mexique en mai 2020, puis à Paris du 7 au 10 juillet 2020. Nous invitons donc l'ensemble des États ici présents à se saisir de ce sujet urgent et à nous rejoindre au Forum Génération Égalité au Mexique en mai et à Paris en juillet 2020 pour éliminer une fois pour toutes les violences faites aux femmes. À cet égard, j'invite tous les participants à nous rejoindre aujourd'hui au side event qui sera organisé en présence de Madame Anita Bhatia, Deputy Executive Director de ONU Femmes, et de l'ambassadeur du Mexique pour présenter le Forum Génération Égalité de 17h à 18h. Merci.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of France, and we thank you for hosting the Generation Equality Conference and wish you all the best for its success. May I now request the distinguished delegate from Tajikistan. Then may I turn to the distinguished delegate from Australia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also to the panellists for sharing your valuable insights today. Violence against women is a gross violation of their human rights and has a profound and devastating impact on its victims, on communities, and on society. Ending violence against women is a priority for Australia domestically and in our international efforts. The Australian Government is proud to have made the single largest Commonwealth investment of $340 million to support the 4th Action Plan of the National Plan to Reduce Violence Against Women and Their Children. The 4th Action Plan is a result of extensive consultation with our civil society. We consulted with over 600 individuals representing 400 organisations. It has been endorsed by the Council of Australian Governments, demonstrating national commitment to ending violence against women in Australian society. The 4th Action Plan contains 20 actions across 5 priority areas. And given that I only have 2 minutes, I will focus on priority area 3, which is respect, listen, and respond to the diverse lived experience and knowledge of women and their children affected by violence. The 4th Action Plan works on the principle that all interventions must be appropriate, accessible and inclusive for all communities within Australia, but particularly our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and culturally and linguistically diverse communities. One way we are doing this is by equipping the service sector in Australia to better address complex forms of violence, such as early and forced marriage, female genital mutilation cutting, dowry abuse and human trafficking. This will occur in a culturally sensitive way, empowering communities to better address these violations of women's human rights. We are pleased that there is a specific action to address these complex forms of violence for the first time. This represents a progression in our understanding of the different forms and impacts of gender-based violence. Through our international engagement, we pursue efforts multilaterally and bilaterally to target the elimination of violence against women. In 2018, Australia joined the Pacific Partnership to End Violence Against Women and Girls. This will see Australia work with the Pacific community, the European Union and UN Women to eliminate violence against women and girls in the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Distinguished Delegate of Australia. May I now request the Distinguished Delegate of Papua New Guinea.
Thank you. Like many countries in the world, you know, we give priority to prevent and eliminate this violence against girls and women in our countries, in our world, in our Asia-Pacific region. We also have these protection laws in place to guide, but it's like, you know, building a very nice building, looks good from outside, but it has to function. It's just like, you know, having good legislation and policy in place, but implementation to really act and punish those who cause troubles, perpetrators has to be really done something with. This is the areas that we can look at because our policies are very good, but the implementation part that need resourcing, need recognition, and need from all sectors to come in to push, like police and CIS, defense, public, NGOs, all sectors has to move and have one mind to tackle this issue. Just a minute to share a little scenario that I have been to. As a minister, I went to officially open a conference in another small town of my country, and the director in charge was driving out with the executive officer on 7 o'clock, you know, when I normally do exercise in the afternoon, so when I came back to the hotel, I saw them driving out with no one inside. It, you know, a question built up in my mind. And then I went to that same conference in another country, in another town, and I opened the conference. I was out. Some few days later, I came back and wanted to board a plane in that town, and I saw them getting ready to go down to Port Moresby to work, and it was already Tuesday morning. As a politician, you see, I have a lot of obligations, and I would expect them to be back in their office before Sunday, so you commence work. So that brought me some suspicions, and then I started digging some information. And I realized that this particular guy heading one organization was using his executive officer as a wife. So he or she is on a notice and will lose his job when the submission comes through for endorsement. So I've realized this myself. No one else, told me, but I have worked from a Christian background. I like to see things flow the way, we talk about Christianity, talk about laws, talk about prevention, talk about this sort of sexual harassment in the workplace. So at least I have identified one, and I will do the action so that people down the line will really see what I'm doing to really enforce this sector that we are really pushing now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister from Papua New Guinea. May I now request the distinguished delegate from Tajikistan.
Okay. Hello. My name is Kirill, and I'm a gender equality activist from Kazakhstan. I'm glad to welcome everyone around. Every third girl in my country has been raped or subject to violent practices. Women spend 2.5 times more on homework and childcare than men. According to the UN 2018, women earn 33% less than men. I'm glad that our decision makers have become more trusting of the people and we receive more realistic data. But the results of this data disappoint me and our civic activists. Recently, we have been observing how much we are trying to change girls and women, create programs for them, make the world safer, and expand their capabilities. It infinitely pleases me, and I'm grateful for that. My concern is that for the most part, men are the source of patriarchal actions, opinions, moods. If we see the reasons why are we investing so little in addressing the causes, I suggest changing the patriarchal culture at its source, changing the minds of men into a healthier, respecting women and their rights and freedoms. It's important to eradicate the causes and not just work with the consequences of the causes. My appeal to those who make decisions in my country and countries with a similar situation in matters of education, culture, security, and gender policy, who, for some reason, are very often silent and not ready to do such programs, maybe because that are men. It's important to create programs for changing patriarchal culture among men. It's important to involve men changing situations with unpaid domestic work. It's important to attract men to support women at the decision-making level. It's important that men become leaders in gender equality to free our people from a violent culture. If you cannot free our fellow citizens, free yourself. Finally, make your efforts in real change in numbers. Thank you very much.
May I now request the distinguished delegate from Tajikistan.
Огромное спасибо. Для меня большая честь представить делегацию Республики Таджикистан и участвовать на этом высоком уровне мероприятия. В Республике Таджикистан также имеется закон Республики Таджикистан о предупреждении насилия, также государственная программа по предупреждению насилия в семье в Республике Таджикистан на 2014-2023 годы. Также согласно этого государственного плана имеется национальный план, на основании которого при Комитете по делам женщин и семьи имеется межведомственная рабочая группа. Также отрадно отметить, что согласно поручению руководителя аппарата президента Республики Таджикистан создана рабочая группа, и эта рабочая группа для усовершенствования нормативно-правовых актов по гендерным стереотипам, защите прав женщин и предупреждения насилия в семье. Согласно этой рабочей группе имеется 3 подрабочие группы. Первая рабочая группа по ликвидации стереотипов при Комитете по делам женщин и семьи. Вторая рабочая группа у нас по правам женщин при Министерстве юстиции Республики Таджикистан. И третья рабочая группа по согласно закона по предупреждению насилия в семье при Генеральной прокуратуре Республики Таджикистан. Эти все рабочие группы работали совместно с нашими международными организациями, которые находятся в Республике Таджикистан, также общественные организации и, естественно, представители министерства и ведомств Республики Таджикистан. В данный момент у нас в Республике Таджикистан рассматривается международная инициатива Spotlight. И, естественно, целенаправленно эта программа по искоренению насилия в отношении женщин и девушек. Мы ожидаем, что это глобальная проблема, конечно, но мы ожидаем, что мы, согласно этой мировой инициативе, можем искоренить насилие в семье. Также для поддержки женщин при Комитете по делам женщин и семьи совместно с общественной организацией создана Центр поддержки по гендерным вопросам и поддерживать женщин и девушек, которые подвергались насилию в семье, горячая линия. И, естественно, согласно нашими стереотипами, мы посадили ежедневно психолога и юриста только женщин, чтобы каждая женщина могла полностью высказаться, обратиться в это решение их вопросов. Также обращаемся непосредственно к председателю комитета для поддержки. В данный момент у нас в республике реализуется 110 информационно-консультативные центры, кризисные центры для реабилитации женщин, которые подверглись насилию. И также при МПО у нас имеется 3 шелтера. Также у нас в Республике Таджикистан введен учебный новый план насилия в семье в Академии МВД Республики Таджикистан. И также правоохранительные органы республики проводят необходимую работу по выявлению, рассмотрению случаев домашнего насилия. У нас в этом году разработано в Министерстве внутренних дел Республики Таджикистан, Министерство здравоохранения, также Комитета по делам женщин и семьи конкретные меры. Значит, согласно этим конкретным мерам у нас имеются документы, которые взаимодействуют для решения этих проблем.
May I request the distinguished delegate, please? Thank you.
Okay.
May I now request the distinguished delegate from China?
我感谢分享各位的精彩发言。妇女的人身权益是最基本的人权。2015年，在全球妇女峰会上，中国国家主席习近平提出促进妇女全面发展的4点主张，其中第3条就是努力构建和谐包容的社会文化。男女平等是中国社会发展的一项基本国策，消除对妇女的歧视和偏见，消除一切形式针对妇女的暴力，是中国政府和社会一贯的坚定的主张和行动。我们一是完善保障妇女权益的法律体系。中国宪法规定，妇女在政治、经济、文化、社会和家庭生活各方面享有同男子平等的权利。我们形成了以宪法为基础，以妇女权益保障法为主体， 包括反家庭暴力法等100多部单行法律法规在内的保障妇女权益的法律体系。2015年通过的刑法修正案9更加有力地惩处强奸幼女、拐卖妇女儿童的犯罪行为。2是建立保障妇女合法权益的工作机制。中国政府专门设立保障妇女权益的国务院妇女儿童工作委员会，所有的省都建立了法规政策性别平等评估机制，各地法院普遍设立了妇女维权法庭和合议庭，努力让妇女在法律法规政策的实施当中感受到性别平等和公平正义。3是在全社会培育性别平等意识，我们加强对传媒的引导和监管，禁止在媒体中出现贬损、否定妇女人格的歧视现象。我们有17个省区市的1万多所中小学开展了性别平等教育进课堂的工作，100多所高校开设了女性学课程，2400所公务人员的培训机构普遍开展男女平等基本国策的课程。中国将继续努力，让每个妇女和女童都沐浴在平等幸福的阳光里。谢谢。
Thank you, Distinguished Delegate of China. May I now request Distinguished Delegate of Pakistan?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to express appreciation to the panelists for their very valuable experience sharing with us. In Pakistan, we have a law in place against sexual harassment at workplace, in line with our commitment towards women empowerment and provision of safe work environment. This has been a very positive step, and accordingly we have institutional mechanisms in place, such as ombudspersons, offices, National Commission of Women at federal and provincial level, and a very vibrant civil society. All of these are monitoring implementation of the law, and they suggest various measures depending on the situation on ground. However, we are cognizant of the fact that change will come from changing mindsets. And that is why we have focused not just on the law, but regular campaign for the sensitization of both men and women in terms of awareness of the law as well as rights of women, and also men engagement programs and with the civil society engagement. However, I would say that yes, civil society does remain our strength in our endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Distinguished Delegate of Pakistan, for acknowledging civil society as strength. May I now request the Distinguished Delegate of Indonesia, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to express our appreciation to all the panelists for sharing their presentation. I'd like to share a little bit what Indonesia is doing with regard to the theme. The existence of violence against women indicated that there is still gender inequality and unequal power relation between men and women. Therefore, since 2000, we have implemented gender mainstreaming strategy in our National Development Plan, starting from the planning, budgeting, monitoring, and evaluation. This gender mainstreaming strategy is now accelerated into gender planning and budgeting. And every 2 years, we conducted monitoring and evaluation to all stakeholders, especially the government institutions at the national and local level. And we award this our partners with a gender award. Now, with regard to the theme, we also like to share that at the moment we focus on 3 thematic issues. We call it 3 Ns. 1, ending violence against women and children. 2nd, ending trafficking in person, especially of women and children. And the 3rd, ending gender inequality in economy. So all the programs now aim to eliminate the 3 Ns. I would also like to share with you with regard to the regulation. We have law on elimination of domestic violence since 2004. And in 2015, we have law on protection of violence of women with disabilities from violence and forced contraception. And at the moment, we just finished drafting bill on elimination of sexual violence and bill on gender equality. We hope that these two bills can be discussed next year with our parliament. In order to support the victims of violence, we also set up and encourage all government at the national and subnational level to set up integrated services for women and children. And this integrated service for women and children are equipped with legal assistant officers, social workers, and psychologists. And we provide the trainings as well as capacity buildings to the stakeholders and also provide facilities to this. With regard to the data, every 5 years we conduct survey. We call it Survey on the Experience of Women. And our last survey in 2016, we found that 1 out of 3 women aged 15 to 64 years experienced violence in the past 12 months. And we also collect and input cases of violence against women and children online and real time from all our stakeholders at the subnational level. Lastly, we also believe that to combat violence, as well as to combat gender stereotype and stigma, we need to change the stereotype. Therefore, we also, since 2 years ago, already rigorously campaign, he for she campaign to our leaders. And now our president is also the champion of he for she at the international level. And we also have a he for she champion from our leaders at the provincial and district levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Indonesia. May I now request distinguished delegate of Laos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Lao government considers violence against women as a serious issue in our society. So, to ensure that this issue has been addressed in a comprehensive manner, the Lao government have enacted the law, many laws relating to this issue, such as development and protection for women, and the law on the prevention and suppression of violence against women. Furthermore, women and children. Furthermore, the National Action Plan on Violence Against Women and Children have been adopted in order to ensure the effective protection against violence. In practice, the counseling center in our society have been established in order to protect and to provide physical and psychological care for victims. So, to combat violence, the Lao government strongly partnership with all stakeholders, private sector, civil society, and also international organizations to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate of Laos. Now I request distinguished delegate of Kazakhstan, please.
Уважаемый модератор, уважаемые спикеры и участники настоящей конференции, я бы хотела сказать, что мы полностью разделяем ту озабоченность, которую выразили сегодня все спикеры и выступающие. Действительно, вопросы борьбы с насилием – это важные проблемы наряду с другими целями ЦУР, потому что, с одной стороны, нужно бороться и защищать права женщин, которые пострадали от насилия, но, с другой стороны, это очень важно для будущего девочек, будущих поколений, те, которые будут формировать свои семьи. Эти семьи должны быть здоровы и в физическом, и в духовном плане. Поэтому мы со своей стороны, как я уже вчера в своем выступлении отмечала, наряду с законом об ужесточении наказания за любые формы насилия против женщин и детей, сейчас сосредоточились на том, чтобы применять обновленный, более расширенный формат именно предупреждения, профилактики таких преступлений, потому что они не рождаются на ровном месте, все равно этому способствует и поведение тех же именно виновных лиц, которые именно имеют склонность к насилию. Поэтому мы призываем другие государства также усилить именно политику в отношении предупреждения преступлений по насилию. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Kazakhstan. Distinguished delegate from Bangladesh, very brief, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Freedom from violence, stigma, and stereotype in Bangladesh, I want to share our experience. In Bangladesh, decreasing violence against women and girls requires, we think, requires a community-based multi-pronged approach and sustained engagement with multiple stakeholders. Most effective initiative address underlying risk factor for violence, including social norms regarding gender roles and respectively of violence. Our government has taken different steps and prevention of violence against women and children. We are implementing multi-sectoral program on violence against women and formulate national action plan prevent violence against women 2018 to 2030. We provide one-stop crisis center, one-stop crisis cell, National Trauma Council Center, and forensic DNA lab for help victim people. We have a national hotline and apps. 109 is our hotline number, toll-free number, and mobile apps Joy has been developing jointly with access to information communication technology divisions to combat the violence against women and children. The SMS also can be sent simultaneously to the Deputy Police Commissioner, Metropolitan Area Police Super for respective district nearby police station and 3 FNF number of victims. These apps will work as a tool of prevention sexual harassment in social media. Our High Court directives give some directives to prevent sexual harassment in office, education, institution in both public and private sector. We have many 12 and rules, regulation, and laws for help the victims. Moreover, we helping forcefully replaced Rohingya people from Myanmar in our country through National Trauma Council,
Distinguished delegate to kindly shorten, please.
who are the victim of sexual violence and other trauma. So, in our country, we prevent this sexual harassment simultaneously with other action. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate of Bangladesh. Unfortunately, due to lack of time, we will not be able to take any more interventions, but I would like to acknowledge the valuable presence of the vibrant, powerful, strong civil society here, whose presence itself is a significance of their collaboration and support for creating a gender violence-free society. And I would like to express deep gratitude to all the member states who have committed to strengthen collaboration with civil society. It's the civil society and the youth who are the holders of the gender equality torch. And I would like to end by saying we need to support each other to tackle stereotyping, stigma, prejudices, and cultural norms that hamper the advancement of women and girls as we enter the 2020, the 25 years of Beijing+25, 20 years of 1325 Women, Peace and Security, and 5 years of Sustainable Development Goals, not to forget to mention 40 years of the CEDAW, which is the Bill of Rights of Women. I would like to thank all of you. Let's have a round of applause to all the panelists as well as the interventionists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Rana, and thank you to all the panelists for a very interesting and informative panel discussion. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, I echo the sentiments of Ms. Rana in relation to the partnerships that we need to tackle violence against women in its many dimensions, and particularly the needed partnerships with civil society. And on that note, I'd like to invite the Civil Society Steering Committee to make a 1-minute statement in relation to the subject matter. You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We want to present this intervention to you. First, expand the scope and the spectrum of violence against women to take into consideration the emerging and targeted forms of violence against women, human rights defenders, and all other marginalized groups in their full diversity, as mentioned in our CSO statement. 2, to support the recommendation of the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women to uphold the absence of consent as a legal standard in rape laws. 3, intensify implementation of legislative measures, provide financing for restorative justice and social support for women and girl survivors of violence and women human rights defenders. Fulfill commitments to women, peace and security agenda in the line with Human Rights Resolution 1325 and other subsequent relevant resolutions and ensure participation of women's groups. The last, uphold sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls in all their diversity, including access to evidence and right-based, non-discriminatory and gender-sensitive CSE in all forms of education. Repeal discriminatory laws that denies access to information services and uphold that unsafe and criminalized abortion is a form of gender-based violence as recognized in CEDAW recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have now reached the end of the morning slot allotted for this agenda item. I encourage those delegations, government delegations that wanted to contribute to this very important topic to give your statements to Secretariat for uploading onto the website. I thank the Secretariat for your support, and conference is adjourned. We'll reconvene at 2 p.m. in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, quick announcements. During the lunch break, all participants are cordially invited to side events. These all begin at 12:30. That's 15 minutes from now. We have gender equality and online violence against women, experiences from the Republic of Korea and Asia in conference room 3 downstairs. Celebration of the 20th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. Identifying good practices on women, peace and security across ASEAN. The public foyer of the ground floor. Female-headed households, a pathway to inclusion, meeting room A. From Cairo to Beijing, accelerating implementation of ICPD and the Beijing Platform of Action 2019. In the theatre, again on the ground floor. Why IT matters, gender, digital divides in Asia-Pacific, in meeting room H. As stated by the chair, please return at 2 p.m. And to just congratulate my friend from Myanmar, the last time I checked, I am a man and I'm here with women.